happy you came over tonight because I needed a good girl time slumber party because I just want to talk.
About what?
Ghosts.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be starting a new series called Slumber Party, where we just hang out in our jammies, no makeup, hair a mess, just ready for bed, kind of like if we were to really hang out. In this video of my series, The Slumber Party, what greater way to start it off than to talk about paranormal experiences from the house in which I grew up. To get started, I want to say that the first time that I could remember having a paranormal experience, I had to have been about 6 years old, and it was myself, my niece, and my 3 cousins playing in the living room. And I do remember that, I mean, we're all like around the same age, maybe just a couple years apart, but I remember looking up the staircase and there was a floating white, just something. I don't want to say it was a figure because it wasn't really a figure, but it was just a floating white form coming down the stairs. And at first I'm like, logically, this 6-year-old mind is kind of like, that's not a string. And I mean, I'm staring at it because I want to know what it is, and I'm like, it's not a string, because it's perfectly just descending down the stairs ever so slowly. And I just remember grabbing my niece and running into the kitchen, and I don't remember what happened after that. Honestly, to be completely frank, I don't remember. All I know is I will never forget that. It was so terrifying. Just creepy. And like, as a little kid, it's like, damn, like, that is terrifying. So another story that I can remember from that house, I was about 8 years old, and I remember I shared a bedroom with my mom. And my mom had went out for the night, so I was asleep in the room. And I just remember I fell asleep with the light on, and I woke up in the middle of the night terrified. Now, there was nothing there, the light was on, but when I tell you, it was freezing cold in that room, and I was absolutely terrified. There was just something, just a gripping, like, fear inside of me that I just could not shake. So I remember just being so afraid that I started crying, and I literally put the blanket over my head and cried until I fell asleep. And I remember the next day waking up and everything was fine. The light was still on. It was no longer freezing. My mom still wasn't home. I wasn't home alone, but my mom still wasn't home. And that gripping terror that I had was no longer there. And when I tell you that, like, I was absolutely terrified, just thinking back to it now, like, I was absolutely terrified. And that never happened to me before and never happened since. So I don't know what it was, but there was something in that room with me, and it was terrifying. So another story time that happened at the house was, this one's kind of like funny, but like, I don't know, like, it could be paranormal, it couldn't be. I personally think it is because there's nothing that explains it. So I remember I was in the living room and I was by myself, and I don't know what had gotten into me, but I just started dancing. And as I'm dancing, I'm walking through the living room, I remember someone being like, a man's voice being like, "What are you doing?" And I just froze, you know, I'm like super embarrassed. And like, I look around, look out the window, no one's there. No one's in the house. No one's around. I don't know who that was, but they embarrassed me, okay? That was so embarrassing, and no one was there. I don't know what it was. But that's just a quick little one, but I remember that. That was terrifying, and no one was there. Like, and when I looked out the window, it was an open space because they were building next door, so there was nowhere for the person to run, and no one was there. It was absolutely terrifying. Another story from that house that I remember is, I remember I had my own bedroom upstairs. The upstairs of the house was really small. There was my bedroom, which was really small, a bathroom, and like a storage room. So I remember my door was open and I was sleeping. Well, not sleeping. I was laying down with my head hanging over the end of the bed, and behind my head was the door, and the door was open. And I remember just relaxing. My head was tilted over the side of the bed, like hanging off, and my hair was out. And I remember that it felt like someone was literally twisting my hair. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel uncomfortable. But I definitely felt someone just lightly twisting just a strand of my hair. It didn't scare me, but I did remember sitting up and kind of like being confused and closing the door, but I wasn't scared. It was more so just, as a teenager at the time, just in my head, I'm just like, what was that? And it never happened again. But it was actually pretty creepy. Another story from the house is, I remember I was sitting in the living room, in the middle of the floor on a chair, in the middle of the night, and I was watching television and all the lights were off. And I was just hanging out watching television, and I remember that, like, I had a necklace kind of like this on, with a thin chain, and as I'm sitting there, I feel something just lightly twisting my necklace, but right at the back of my neck, just twirling it. I didn't feel scared, I didn't feel uncomfortable, but of course, once again, it's just my conscience being like, what the fuck is this? Like, what's happening? And I remember, like, it stopped, and I just got up and went to my room. Kind of didn't acknowledge it or anything like that. Ugh, it was so terrifying. Another story that I have from the house is about the time that my grandma passed away, and it was the night of her funeral, and a bunch of the family came over to the house to stay over because they came from out of state. And I remember I was standing in the kitchen with my niece, and I was standing against the counter, and she was standing by the table, probably about 6 feet in front of me, and there was a Gatorade bottle on the counter, probably like not an arm's length away from me, like further than an arm's length away from me. It was empty. And so we were just talking about my grandma and stuff like that. We were talking about how we were anticipating my uncle to come, and he was, you know, supposedly on his way. And I remember, as we're talking, the Gatorade bottle flies off the counter. And my niece and I just freeze, and we look at each other, and she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. Because that's just how she is. She just doesn't want to acknowledge it. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, and then I was just like, jokingly, I was like, Grandma, I know that's you. Like, do that when your son gets here, because I'm not ready for this. Like, jokingly I said it, but, like, I was kind of serious. And I just remember, like, trying to talk to my niece about it. I'm like, dude, like, the windows aren't open. Like, there's nothing to explain how that just flew off. Like, and it flew off as if you hit it, like, with force. Like, it flew off into the middle of the kitchen. It hit the floor and everything. And I can't explain it to this day. It was absolutely terrifying. It's just thinking back, and I mean, it seems like quite a bit of stuff happened in that house, but honestly, this is, I mean, I lived there for 19 years, so this is in a span of 19 years that these things were happening. So it wasn't like one of those Amityville horrors, like every day something's going on. It was never like that. Things would happen years apart, but in hindsight, as I look back to it, I'm just like, I don't know if it was the house or what, but girl, something wasn't right, okay? Something was not right. I really do think it was the house, though, because I do remember my mom telling me about how once she was in her bedroom and, like, she heard knocking at the furnace, like, banging as if someone was in the basement banging. And I remember she purposely didn't tell us until we were moving out of the house about that happening. And once she told me that, I was so happy we were moving out, because I was like, a little bit of me was like, maybe all of this is just me bugging out, being a kid, having an imagination. But once she told me that, I was done. Girl, I was done. But that's all the paranormal activities I want to talk about that happened at the house that I grew up in. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the concept, give me some ideas on what to talk about at our next slumber party, girl, next weekend. Ooh! I'm such a loser. Thanks for watching, though.